once patience. I am Scott Endel. I'm the Director of Parks, Rec, and Forestry here in the city of Fitchburg. So I thank all of you for sure for coming out, and certainly all the folks online who are here. I appreciate your interest in being here, and I would be remiss if I didn't introduce our dignitaries. We have Randy Udell, who is a council member here. Jim Wheeler is also a council member. Patrick Cheney is a Park Commission chair, or not chair, but Park Commission member. Sarah Schrader is a Park Commission member. Julia Arata-Frada, who's the council rep to the Park Commission, and Christina is also here. And actually, if Sue Easterday, I think she's scheduled to be online. She's the chair of the Park Commission, so if you see her name on there. So just as a way of introductions, again, an appreciation and a thank you for you coming out tonight. Today, what we're going to do is present the final Park Commission approved master plan for Stoner Prairie. And I will tell you that the Park Commission is truly excited to get going with this. It's been kind of sitting there for a while, and we're finally able to get the master plan completed and actually beginning to start to strategize a little bit about implementation and getting it built. So with that introduction, I will introduce Rob Stein from EOR. He's our planning consultant who helped us through the process, and I know in the PowerPoint, I do have copies of the PowerPoint if you're just coming in, and you can follow along. They did put that together, and pretty comprehensive, kind of go through the process, and certainly time for questions at the end. And again, thank you for your patience in being here, and I'll kick it to you, Rob. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, sir. Now, if you can hear me okay. All right. Yeah, thanks for coming out. Thanks to the council and Parks Commission members and the community members that have provided feedback. I appreciate your time, especially tonight, waiting patiently for this to get going. So we're off and running now, but thanks for everybody for throughout the process here. All right, and we're all familiar with the site, Stoner Prairie Park. Just a little bit of the background in the process to how we got to where we're at here. In, I think, 2001, there was a community survey that was put out, neighborhood survey, just asking community members about parks, wants, and needs and concerns. And it was their opportunity to provide feedback and what they wanted to see in their neighborhood parks. And that was provided to me and my team, that we went through that and kind of used that as a guiding force when we kind of started looking at the space itself and kind of imagining what this could be. We were brought on and met with city staff and stakeholders to understand the background of the park and what sort of opportunities and constraints that the site offered. And from there, we jumped into concept development. And we'll go through all the concept developments and kind of how we got to the final product. But the Parks Commission and people that attended those meetings were instrumental in kind of guiding and informing the design as we went forward. So, a little bit of background. This is just kind of a time lapse of the site we're looking at. And it's pretty interesting to see the growth of the city and the neighborhood in this area. In particular, and the need for a neighborhood park is ever growing as this site kind of gets surrounded and enveloped by the surrounding developed neighborhood. And on the far right, that's kind of where we stand today. Maybe a couple more houses have gone in, but you can see how it's really closing in and becoming a really nice cloistered neighborhood park. This slide just kind of shows how the park sits within the greater context of the Fitchburg park systems, how it sits within other neighborhood parks and community parks, and kind of where it sits in the larger regional trail systems, roads, to get a better understanding of kind of where we're sitting. And there is our site on the left. It's about 10.5 acres. On the upper right-hand portion, for those online, thank you for everyone online, by the way. This portion up here, this tree map that was put together by the city, I believe, is that upper right-hand portion, which is kind of accounts for the bulk of the trees on the site. There are a couple central to the site, some mature Norway spruce, pine trees, I think they are actually. So the site is dominated by open space. There is kind of an outdated tot lot, some trails, a backstop, and a lot of open space. So, to begin the concept design portion, we took a crack and informed by that survey, started putting pencil to paper to lay out a couple of different options. And we developed 2 different concepts. This is one of the concepts here. And this one takes approach where it kind of has more improved native green space, but it kind of separates 2 active use spaces. The upper right being playgrounds with like a trail system, a circular trail system, and then over kind of in the lower right side, court sports. And what we're showing on the master plan, and I'll discuss a little bit further, is an outlot that is city-owned property where I show a building, and we'll touch on that in just a little bit here. But this concept kind of opens up centralized open spaces, adds a lot of trees, more native improved areas and habitat. Concept 2 starts to push those active use areas, the playground, shelter, court sports, a little bit closer together in kind of that upper central area. Still trying to, one of the main things in the survey was more improved trails for walking, strolling. It's not uncommon for most neighborhoods because who doesn't want expanded areas for walking, exercising, biking, scooters, things like that. So we did show some improved, but there is some decent connectivity with the existing east-west path that kind of dissects the site. And similar to concept 1, there's a lot of open space. There is some programmed activities in the southern portion with ultimate frisbee and softball, baseball type sports as well. As part of this kind of step in the process, we looked at kind of a concept plant palette. And City of Fitchburg has a focus on sustainability and being resilient landscapes. And it's fully intended that this would be a native landscape that is focused on any of the trees, canopy trees, specimen trees. Urban orchards was part of a concept that was abandoned. But those ediscapes, things like that, is going to be kind of the guiding palette as you move forward to develop some of these areas. And then the improved kind of native planting areas have several ecological benefits and provide a certain aesthetic and a buffer from neighborhoods and houses. And so that's kind of the landscape that was generally widely accepted by the Parks Board. And then we looked at some of the character images depicting some of the activities or spaces that are proposed throughout those concepts. So I presented these concepts to the Parks Board and got a lot of really good feedback, important feedback. And some of the things missed the park, some of them were right on. And what we did from that point is we kind of grabbed some from pile A, some from pile B, and developed a master plan that incorporated items from both concepts. And the Parks Board and city staff were really good in kind of guiding and articulating some of the concerns of the city or the neighborhoods to kind of develop a master plan that was trying to achieve all those things outlined from the survey and just the goals of the city.
And if I might, Rob, maybe just interrupt for one, just a point of clarification. I know Rob mentioned it was a neighborhood park. Actually, the Common Council and the Park Commission, through a process, decided that this was going to be an area park, which in that process, it kind of widens the use of the area. And typically with an area park, you have a little bit larger acreage, and then potential bathrooms and shelter rentals and those kinds of things. So I just wanted to.
Thank you. That is an important point to bring up. So based off all that feedback, went back to the drawing board and developed this plan here. There was this is slightly revised from what was initially brought to the board, but there was only minor tweaks to the final design as you see it now. So what we have with our final design here is a more focused active use area. It was important to kind of focus all those active sport activities in a congregated area for maintenance reasons, security reasons, flow and function to reduce breaking up as much of the site. And then there's opportunities in the near future with that outlot owned by the city as well to kind of maximize what the park has planned with what the Public Works has planned as well. So as you can see in this dashed area here, we have the kind of the hub of the park. Going off of that main spine, which is a great connector between the east and the west and even the northern neighborhoods, and the park and the schools themselves. You have a centralized area with your court sports, play space, shelter space, gathering space, plaza space, and they're laid out in a way that they want to relate to one another, and you want to kind of group those activities, but they have symbolic barriers as well. So there's a dissecting diagonal path that goes through. Well, I'll jump back to that. It goes through that central area, but we'll jump to that on the next slide. I have an enlargement there. One thing that was brought up is the desire to have a maximized amount of native restoration area. And we went back and forth on how that should best be executed. The area to the south of the site, maintaining that use for organized sports was kind of the consensus on that area. So much of that area remains the same. In one of the concepts, I had a east-west pass connecting the southern end of the site as well, and that was out as well. Just kind of keep that open, keep it as flexible as possible, so you can kind of blur those borders between the schools and the park as far as use activities. And then on the northern site, having kind of these larger banks of restored native landscaping that provide habitat and ecological benefits as well. And that bleeds over to the east and the northeast portion of the site as well, kind of wrapping in and around the existing trees on site. And then, adding more to create kind of that oak savanna in the native prairie area, and then some trees along pathways to provide shade and kind of reduce that urban heat island effect as well. Now this is just a little enlargement of kind of the hub of the space here. And that connector sidewalk that goes diagonally, it kind of creates this symbolic barrier between the play space and the shelter. They should relate to one another because, parents, if they have kids playing, they want to be in a space that they can kind of observe what's going on at the playground, but it's not right on top of them. Likewise, there's good view sheds to the south as well, into the open fields also. So the play space, this is all ages play space with 2 to 5, 5 to 12. Specific elements, play equipment is kind of the next step of the process to pick out. But a dynamic play space that has elements for all ages and abilities is the goal there. This arcing row of trees and stones kind of creates this kind of picnic space symbolically in the middle. It's not defined by a fence or a hard barrier, but it kind of signifies that this is part of kind of the family gathering space, and less frisbee, kind of those ball sports. And then we have adjacency, but a little bit of separation between the basketball court. Also, part of this gathering space is a small plaza area with bicycle repair station, seating, just a couple other site furnishings as well. One of the comments by the Parks Board was to really kind of maximize that native areas, and I think it was a really good suggestion, because what we did by bringing kind of this prairie area down closer to those active spaces is that the open space that we left, it really creates kind of a inward focusing hub of activity. And it also creates a nice buffer and foreground for houses and neighborhoods, as you look beyond the park space. Here's some images kind of depicting some of the amenities that would be in the park. And as I alluded to, there is the city-owned outlot to the northeast here. And thank you, northwest. The significance is that there's plans to have a well house or a pump house built there in the near future. And I don't know if design has kicked off yet, but that's going to be happening soon. So we've had meetings and we coordinated with engineering and public works to try to, if we can, we ideally incorporate in the future restroom, because all the services are already there. If we were to build a dedicated restroom facility, that would involve running utilities and making additional connections, which would be costly to the city. So if we can, we would like to kind of maximize the infrastructure that's already there and plan for a restroom and potentially a covered space. And maybe if I might, just a point of reference, the park system has done this already in one of our other parks where we've worked in partnership with the water department to create both a shelter and their well station at Hugo Jamestown Park. So it has been a relationship that we've utilized and maximized before in the past. So I would suspect we try to do the same here. Yeah, so it was included as kind of part of the master plan because we want to look at the big picture and we don't want to just look at the property boundaries themselves. And this is city-owned property, and working with different department heads and trying to coordinate what that space could be to benefit the neighborhood and the community as a whole is something we're trying to strive for. And these are some graphics that just kind of depict the future build out of what the park would look like. You can see where you can visualize a little bit more kind of the vastness of the native improved areas and how you can still have those connections through there, but minimizing so we're not piecing up this prairie area so much that it's kind of prone for invasive species on those edges and things like that. So
it does provide natural fire breaks and those kinds of things too, which is
it does. Yep.
And those kinds.
Yeah, and depending on how the city handles their native landscapes like that, a burn plan would take that into account as well. So this is looking south from that existing crosswalk. And you can see we kind of maintain formal connections, but also provide some more informal, which would be like a grass path through these prairie areas, which is common you see in a lot of the Dane County parks. Going into the site a little bit, looking southwest, right at sunset. We caught it just in time. aerial shot looking to the southeast over that main gathering space. You can see the adjacency and connection to the two schools. Closer up. You know, you have to really look into the future when you look at these. When you create these graphics, you don't want to be misleading on how it's going to look immediately upon construction, but you want to be optimistic that the trees are going to get planted and they're going to come in. But it does give you kind of a look into the future a little bit about, you know, once this space gets a little time to mature, you know, kind of how it really kind of comes into itself. One shot from the gathering space there. You can see that connectivity, but the adjacency, so you can keep an eye on young ones. And that basically concludes the presentation. You know, it's been a wonderful process. It doesn't end here. You know, the next steps are to look towards implementation, phasing if need be, and kind of making it a reality and realizing the planning process that we've gone through as, you know, as a consultant, but also a parks department and a parks board and city. So I welcome any questions and comments, and I'm going to be around for the next, till anybody's here. So I welcome any feedback, but if you don't have any, I thank you for coming.
Can we all make comments? Is this our time?
Mm-hmm.
Here, I got
Hello. Hello, nice to meet everyone. I'm Jody Schilling. I live in the Stony Prairie neighborhood in one of the houses that's sort of adjoining to the park. So I've been a part of these parks meetings for a long time and sort of watched this whole process go on. And I do have kids that are both in the middle school and elementary school, and I have two main concerns with the plan. And so thank you for a great presentation, though, Rob. Thank you very much. And my main concern is that we have a lot of middle schoolers that are starting to, you know, kids are growing up in the neighborhood. And so I'm at these parks a lot. I'm at the elementary school park almost every night. And the middle schoolers continue to destroy the little park equipment that is right next to behind the elementary school. And I watch them every night, and I ask them not to, and they break the glass, and then I contact the school, and then they put up the boards. But there's a lot of middle schoolers these days, and they have nothing to do, right? And if we do not provide something for these middle schoolers to do, we're going to have trouble. And so I know you mentioned, you know, that main play areas like the tots and then also up to age 12. And so I've been to so many parks in Eau Claire and so many parks in Wausau, Wisconsin. I mean, these parks are amazing, right? And we have this tax base here, and we have this commitment to amazing parks. And we've got zip lines, we've got Ninja Warrior, we've got amazing things. And so if this truly, I know Scott mentioned, this is going to be an area park, right? Can we make this for, you know, kids above 12, also kids or adults? And so many of these parks have had just great equipment for these teens. And so if we had that, then the teens wouldn't have to congregate and keep breaking the elementary school playground, right? And granted, that's a supervision issue and all of that. But we want to give the teens something to do so that they're not doing other destructive things in the neighborhood, which we've also had some problems with sometimes. So we don't want them knocking on doors, and we don't want them doing other things. We want them to be playing at this course or giving the teens a spot to hang out. So I think, you know, using the plan that you've got, but then can we expand that playground portion and give kids more something to do? Because even if you're sitting there and you have older kids, there's just nothing for the older ones to do. So that would be my main concern, and that's the main reason that I'm here. Something for middle schoolers and beyond, and just, you know, seeing the pictures of what we have planned for this park, for the park equipment, it's frankly just weak, right? And I say this, and, you know, I think there's so many cool things, whether we need to visit those parks or what, to find out. There's some really cool park equipment. Minnesota has a ton, and like I mentioned, you know, Wausau and Eau Claire. So a lot of that would be good, and I think that would be a good use of our city resources. And then my second thing, again, having to do with the families using the park, the area that currently is slated to become turned into Prairie, and believe me, I'm very much into environmental things, I just don't think that this is the place. Because again, this is our area park, this is where people are playing, and I live right there and I watch every day. And in the spring and the summer and the fall, that area where you've got slated to turn into Prairie, families are there with kites, with little kids and golf clubs, and they are having so much fun, right? Or they're teaching their dog a new trick, but it's families playing. And a few nights now that we've got all these middle schoolers in the neighborhood and elementary schoolers, they're all playing football together and all that. And granted, they could walk to the field closer to Savannah Oaks, but they don't, right? And so I see that field and the toddler play area, that whole field being used all the time, and now we're gonna turn it into Prairie. And I'm all for Prairie, but I feel like for Fitchburg, there should be a different spot for the Prairie, because this is where all the families just want to walk to a play place. And hypothetically, they could walk further, but they won't, and they don't. And so I'd like us to really look at that and either making the Prairie area a lot smaller or maybe just moving it to a different part of Fitchburg Park Plan. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for your comments. I appreciate them.
Hello, my name's Rebecca. I also live in the Stoner Prairie neighborhood. I agree with a lot of what you said. My primary comments were going to be regarding the Prairie as well, specifically how there's a big patch of prairie essentially cutting off the path from the toddler park, which I'm also disappointed that we're not doing anything with the toddler park. As you mentioned, it's very outdated. You're saying the new park is going to be starting at age 2, so then what about the kids under 2? They are not going to get anything, just the crummy little park. And then even with that park, it's completely cut off. When you're going to that park, you'll often have a stroller or a wagon, and are you going to either cart that around to the street or cut through the Prairie? That just doesn't make sense to me, the way you have it laid out with the Prairie. And I just agree, less Prairie in general or somewhere else for this. And we fly kites right on Cornelius where there's Prairie slated, so yeah, I can agree with all that. And my kids aren't middle schoolers yet, but they will be, so I definitely, look forward to more age-appropriate things for all ages.
Thank you. Yeah, and the play equipment, like I said, it's not selected yet, but it's intended for all ages uses. So something akin to what's there now, it would be accounted for those age groups in the planned play space.
In regards to the play equipment, I think taking some of the Fireman's Parks or the Dream Bank Parks as an example. So Fireman's Park in Monona has a great kind of fort aspect, and then right next to it has that shared space. I think one thing I would look at that shared space and the covered area is they also have walls that you can drop down. So if there is wind or rain, you can kind of expand that usability in the season. I mean, we do live in Wisconsin, so it would be nice to have some type of windbreak in that area and a power outlet or two for kind of music or anything else. And then in regards to the play equipment, I think it's called Bridge Park in Monona by Buck and Honeys that has the zip line and a 2-story. And what I've noticed when we've gone there is that's super engaging for 12 and up. So I've even seen kids that are obviously babysitting younger kids, but they're able to go and climb all the way up, kind of 2.5 stories. It's a nice, safe, it's compact and dense, and they also have kind of a spiral slide, which is always a hit with the kids. And trying to go that kind of expanse, you've got the zip line that takes up a little bit more real estate, but then that compact, being able to go kind of smaller area on the bottom, but then go 2.5 stories is extremely helpful. So I have a 4-year-old, and I think in the Stoner Prairie neighborhood, we have a bunch in that area. So I'd love to be able to see them use this park consistently for as long as possible.
Thank you.
And I might, if I might, maybe just offer a couple thoughts in regards to larger types of equipment. The things that you're kind of referring to are really kind of special, unique features within a park system. And typically what we would do is try to plan those for community parks, which are for the larger community. You know, not to say that there couldn't be an amenity, a piece of an amenity that might provide that type of attraction to the neighborhood. But if we begin to start to do those kinds of things, and it's the only one within the park system within the city, that will draw people outside of the area there. So that, you know, that's something that we've got to kind of take into effect, that certainly we don't want a whole, well, I guess the thought is to not bring the whole city there, but certainly the idea of having a little bit more variety, or an idea of some kind of a zip line or Ninja Warrior. But again, if that's the only zip line or feature within the park system within the city, that's going to be attractive, and there'll be people from outside the area, if you would, coming to the park. But point well taken. What'd you know? Janelle, I see your hand up. Do you have some thoughts?
I have two questions and then an ask. At one point, there was some discussion of solar panels. Is that a part of what we're considering here?
No solar panels in the area that we're in charge of. That's for sure. But certainly, I think as any new city facility or structure, I think evaluations of the benefits of solar panels and the energy they produce and those kinds of things need to be factored in. But at this point, for the park proper, if you would, there's no thought of solar panel. But if someone, you know, provides a solar panel or something, we could get on the network or the grid, if you would, and utilize the energy. That might be a thought. But
Have we given any consideration to security cameras as part of the shelter?
Certainly. I think that's kind of a standard type of, along with enough light and those kinds of things. Yeah, those are kind of standard
If I could
standard
add
considerations.
one thing that came up, and we're not into the details of, you know, what that gathering space could be. I don't know where to look. If I look at the big screen, or if I look, or I just talk up to the sky. But there was discussions about potential with the covered shelter in the park, if that could accommodate solar panels to power the lights of that facility, cameras. I don't know about that, but that would be something that would be looked into a little bit further down the line to see the feasibility of that, you know, cost-benefit analysis.
Hey, Scott.
My last little thing, as we kind of take a look at the equipment, I think it would be worthwhile to consider different age groups and types than we currently have at the adjoining elementary school. I know the elementary school has got a nice amount of equipment, and so if we were able to do something that was a little bit diverse from that, I think that could do a nicer job in complementing what the neighbors are looking for, both with the littler tots and then some of the older kids as well. And I know there may be an opportunity for one or two pieces for the middle or for the elementary kids it's different than what we see there. But just think that might be worth exploring.
Absolutely. Good thoughts, Janelle. Are you good?
I'm good.
Mr. Wheeler?
Yes, I got a couple of inquiries about solar panels from people emailing me and calling me and everything else like that. So I did contact Tracy Foss, who's the one of the engineers. And according to city policy, you know, when the new city building is built, you know, solar panels are considered. Right now, it's really too early to talk about solar panels. There will be an analysis that will be done to see about the cost effectiveness of solar panels, and that RFP for the design should be going out in the next couple of months. When I talked to Tracy just this past week, she was actually writing that RFP for design. So it's too early to talk about solar panels, but when everything is all said and done, there'll still be a lot of time for public input as it goes through the various committees.
Thanks, Mr. Wheeler.
For those unfamiliar, RFP is just a request for proposal. So they're soliciting design firms to design that. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Scott. He's got a chat question.
We have several questions coming through the chat right now. Ben Lindbergh is asking about the fence that was between the park and the new houses that was removed. Let me just read his comment. Someone, or either the school district or William Ryan. Sorry, too many hands going on here. Let me see the microphone. Someone, school district or William Ryan, removed the fence between Stoner Prairie and the Frisbee fields. There should be a plan to require those to be restored, but I'd like to advocate for a connector path between Stoner Prairie neighborhood and Savannah Oaks. He has a map of the situation here. I'd have no way to show you that.
Well, and I think he may be referring to the fence that segregated the existing Stoner Prairie Park from the Stoner, or from the school district, and they removed that because of safety concerns or something, as I recall. So that wasn't our fence. That was the school district's fence. So that's really a question for the school district.
Trying to keep up. Yep. Victor Hollow says he agrees with Jody. Too much prairie, underwhelming basic equipment proposed in the current master plan. Haven't heard much collective support for the prairie, so was surprised it's such a large part of the plan. Brian writes, ultimate Frisbee participants need to respect the neighborhoods more. Speeding in and out has been intolerable. If they want to use this park, the group needs to show respect to the residents. Ben also chimed in with, the city suggested the solar panels were going to go on the second lot just south of the well building. It's been on several plans.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brent. Brittany and I live directly adjacent to the park on the north, one of the two lots on the north side. We support the plan as presented. I think it nicely balances a variety of uses, open space, the prairie, and the community gathering space. Thanks to the Parks Commission for putting this together.
PC?
Yeah, well, first I wanted to hear what the neighbors said about things, and I want to throw in my what I've heard on following some of these issues. As far as the solar panels, isn't there a interest or a trend to put solar panels on all of the city buildings, including well houses, generally speaking? I mean, we're not constructing this thing yet.
There is, but this is the first time we've seen this particular application that was outlined in an earlier version as far as the pole mounted. So I think a number of us from council were under the impression it would be on the roof of the well house, not pad mounted or pole mounted. Well, I'm not sure the term of what it is, but ground mounted. I mean, there's different terms, but I'm under the impression it would be on the roof. But I've also heard some things about battery backup and so forth. I was always under the impression it would be back. Whatever the solar panels generated would go back into the grid. So I think there's going to be a lot more discussion on this, because there's a lot of unknowns.
Yeah, and this is probably that's too far ahead to, say yes or no if it's going to be solar panels somewhere around there. But that's what I'm kind of hearing is there's a trend to put them wherever we
There
can.
is, and both Jim and I have received those calls, and there has been a number of residents in that area that are not in favor of the solar panels that have been shown on the master plan. So,
Yeah, and when someone did mention ground-mounted or so to
Yeah.
the south of the well house, I did hear of that somewhere along the way too. I don't know how firm that is. It may be just thrown out there to see, just to think about it.
I don't think anybody's obviously against the solar panels. It's just now of where they're located. I think a number of us were under the impression it would be roof mounted. So
I've heard that more.
Clarify.
Janelle also asked about security cameras. The well houses typically, I believe, or maybe all of them, they're scattered around the city. The well houses typically do have security cameras for the security of the well house. That would be one thing. And our hope and our idea here is that the well house would include restrooms. So that would sort of double cover the restrooms part of the well house, if that's the way it goes. And of course, that's a city public works building, so they have to have internet connections and such like that to there already. If Janelle or anyone is asking if there might be security cameras on the shelter, just by comparison, I would point out that there are security cameras on two shelters, the McKee shelter and the Hugel Jamestown shelter. Both of those shelters do have inside rooms that lock. So it kind of, as far as that as an example, the security cameras kind of watch the building, and then it's got inside rooms and such that get unlocked and locked by internet access. Having that internet access to a shelter for the locking and unlocking of inside rooms and for the security cameras is an extra cost to the city for that internet connection.
Now, so the cameras that you're speaking of, it's to lock and unlock the doors. Is that correct? The room?
No, they're just McKee and both McKee and Hugel Jamestown have security cameras, and they also have inside rooms that lock.
Okay.
So the internet connection has a double function of, I presume Scott can maybe log on from his office.
Sure.
And see what the cameras are seeing or something or other. There is some kind of a connection to city staff to be able to see what's going on through those cameras, but they can also lock and unlock the doors from.
That part I understand, but I'm not sure. Scott can probably answer the question. Are the cameras active? Okay. I was under the impression that we didn't monitor the actual facility. So you're stating that they're active. Somebody monitors those cameras and pretty regularly, or 24/7.
Well, we actually, it does act as a deterrent, but certainly if
Sure.
something does occur, then we're able to view what happened.
Recorded.
And find out who did it and those kinds of things. So it's really kind of become a bit of a standard just for security of the people that are there and as a deterrent to try and keep everything safe and in good repair.
Very good.
I've seen the systems. I got a tour of it when Hugel Jamestown opened up and everything, and I believe there are recorders in the building that are recording, I presume, what the cameras are seeing all the time. So if something happens, somebody can go back and look at the recordings. It's probably like a standard home security system. It monitors, it records, something happened, you go back and look at the recording.
So there is not a live body viewing those at any point in time. It doesn't go back to the police department. I mean, this is new to me.
I don't know. Yeah. From my opinion, I hope that there is no city staff sitting at a TV, watching camera.
Well, I don't mean specifically that camera, but you understand the point that I'm making.
Yeah. The point that I'm making is that Hugel, Jamestown, and McKee have inside locked rooms with electronic locking and unlocking doors, and then the cameras are watching not only the outside of the building, outside of those locked rooms, but the inside in the locked room as well. So having the internet access, which is a city expense, is doubly used for remote access to the cameras and for the door locking mechanism. This, at least as far as the concept picture, doesn't have any inside locking room. It's not designed yet.
Yeah.
So that's up in the air too. In other words, I'm kind of saying, is the internet expense worth it for the shelter part, just to have some cameras there or such? There would be, I think, very likely cameras on the well house over there. And then another point that I was going to make, we've seen this on the Park Commission for a while now, and there was something that I noticed that I wanted to mention. Now, some people are saying that they're not interested in the Prairie area there. I want to show you on the map here of an idea that I was thinking of. Okay.
Nope, I just walked into it.
So, just as far as the Prairie area, I live far away from here, so I heavily defer to whatever the neighbors around here would like. Whatever you like is fine with me. As far as the Prairie here, one change that I've seen that I would make is regarding this path right here that goes straight north. And as you see in some of the pictures in the handouts there, and as this shows right here, the path that goes straight to the north just goes up to this east-west path, and then it stops. It does not connect to the street. And this is an area that is maintained by an owner with permission. So there is not direct access from here to the street. There, I believe, there's not even a sidewalk along there. Correct? There is a sidewalk? Okay. But with this vegetative and prairie area right here, this is grass right now, but it doesn't connect through there to get to the sidewalk. In other words, you got to go like over here to get to the sidewalk, right? Okay, so what?
It follows that. It cuts in.
Goes over here and then you connect to the sidewalk, right?
There's one over there where the house is as well, so it kind of
Yeah,
back to the left.
okay. I'm not sure, so I don't want to say. So this path that goes straight north seems kind of purposeless to me. My view of it would be to eliminate this, and instead, I look at it this way. If you're here, if you're in this area, coming from the shelter, playground, anything, basketball, this one here going to the northeast definitely connects out to the street. From here, I would put a path that goes to the northwest out to here, through here, but I would also make it a little more interesting and make it kind of meander a little bit through here, make it, not just dead straight, but through there. And I'm wondering what the neighbors who said they're not interested in Prairie would think of that, or is there some version that would make the Prairie more appealing, more useful, more interesting that you could go with? Have this.
Well, I think thinking about it from a parent's perspective is really important. So if you're going to be at that area where the play equipment is, maybe not everyone wants to play, and somebody wants to play catch, or someone wants to play frisbee. You want to be able to keep all your kids somewhat in view, and so if they have to go all the way to those other fields or things like that, having it so that everyone can be centrally located. I mean, if there's trees there, which I love trees for shade and all of that, they can't really play there. So it would be nice if next to that whole park there was some area. So again, thinking about it from a parent's perspective, and it's extra, if all that prairie is there and you have to walk over there. So just thinking about that, of like if you have some kids that are a little bit younger and then some kids that are middle and then some are a little older, you want to keep them all sort of somewhat in the same area. And so from a parent's perspective, this park doesn't really work the way it needs to. And I think from a non-parent's perspective, I think it's probably okay. But really looking at, and I'd love other parents to talk about that too, but I think that's part of just having all of that prairie there and losing that open space where kids of any age could play in it.
Scott, I have a few more folks from online who'd like to comment. I'm reading them all. It's okay.
Very good, thanks.
Going back to Chase Nicholson would like to say he agrees with Jody as well. I wish the prairie space was in a more convenient location, not the place nearest to most neighborhood residents. Ben has forwarded a picture of a drawing that has solar panels on the second lot. Molly Groos is watching with her 8-year-old daughter, Clara. Clara would like to comment that she would like to like the play equipment to be cool. Otherwise, no one will want to come play there. She is looking forward to a brand new awesome park. Thanks. And Brian chimes in one more time. The prairie should remain grass. Where will kids play touch football? Question mark.
We'll let Chris go on that.
I'll just say that, hi, I'm Chris Sina, Parks Commission member. As we've been looking at different iterations of this plan and thinking about a lot of the community feedback we received before pencil ever touched paper, one thing that was fairly highly requested was incorporating areas that could be for reflection and sort of calm. People can, sort of wander, peacefully sit in the shade under a bench, and some more naturalized areas. And so that was kind of the goal that every, the Parks Commission and the design team, of course, we're looking at with these prairie areas. And they can be open prairie spaces, they could be more savanna spaces, all things that we've heard already tonight. And so that's why we're seeing that prairie there, is we're trying to make this a park for everybody. And certainly the kids using the park are a huge portion of who we're thinking about, but we are also trying to make it attractive to other folks that made those desires well known early in the design process, and it was a very highly ranked feature, and so that is why we're showing that, and we're trying to incorporate it. And certainly things can change, but that's the perspective we've been coming from with that prairie area. And looking at the park further to the south, or the part of the park further to the south, where we have so much open grass, and it's really flexible because it's adjacent to this school-owned property, we felt that it was most appropriate to keep that big flexible field of grass open, which is why you're seeing the prairie in the northern portion of the park, because it's less flexible and less usable as open lawn space. And it also provides a buffer between the park and the homes. Maybe not everybody sees that as an advantage, but we felt that it could be nice to provide a little bit of separation between the streetscape and the houses, and then what is sort of functioning as a hub of the park in the middle there that we've seen the enlargements of, with the big with the shelter and the play spaces and sports court and things like that. So just a little bit of background information I wanted to share with everybody.
I just want to know what kind of timetable. I don't know.
Well, and I can certainly, call, is there any other thoughts or comments or questions? Yes.
Thank you. Going off of what Chris, you had said, right? I don't think any of us are fully opposed to Prairie. We just don't love the location. And so is there a way that we could get creative and use, and again, I'm just giving ideas here. So the area south of the field south of the ball field. Could we turn that into Prairie? So it'd be really nice because that path where you walk there between the schools, you know, you could walk and then you could go for a Prairie nature walk if you wanted there, or take a little detour. Or could we move one of those flexible open spaces, maybe not rentable, but to where the Prairie is, so it's just flexible open space for families to play, and then maybe make, I don't know, something in there where that flexible open space is. We want to, of course, keep plenty of fields for officially Frisbee or whatever people are doing and renting there, but can we just move the Prairie? Because I think some of the parents in the neighborhood or a lot of folks in the neighborhood feel like it's really cutting off the park rather than, you know, the Prairie could be in a more secluded portion of the park where you have to walk a little further to it. So up for ideas if there's ways that we could still keep it, but just move it if people want, or make it smaller. Like, do we really need all of that to be Prairie versus field that kids can play?
One thing to keep in mind, I'll just comment on that quick. The more you fracture those prairies and make them smaller, the less successful and less kind of eco-benefits you get from those. They're more prone to higher maintenance costs. They're more invasive needing for more burning, herbicides, things like that. They don't provide as much habitat for larger vertebrates and things like that. So it's kind of weighing the two options. If you're going to fracture it, it becomes more of a cost to the cities, and it's frankly it doesn't have the chance to be as attractive and as an amenity. So just.
John Schaefer writes in, I think the Prairie provides a nice buffer from the nearest houses. If any of the nearest neighbors have any noise concern, the Prairie provides a nice distance from the activity. 2 questions. First, from Matthew Reef, has there been any discussion about a small hill for sledding? And Amanda Miklos says, can the Prairie be in a different area than currently proposed? It will certainly become trampled with kid traffic, although they cut through the area, and it is not conducive to the play we currently see in the open area.
And if there aren't any other thoughts or comments, I guess I could go to the question of the next step. Certainly, you know, with the Park Commission members that we have here, that we'll probably go back to the Park Commission to get their thoughts and ideas on the comments that we did receive, and then make any potential adjustments or tweak to the plan. And then we'll, you know, get it through the formal approval process, and then begin to implement. Which, well, really, what it'll need will be an engineer or a firm to put together some construction documents and details and manage the project and get it built. And certainly, it's all going to be, you know, the Park Commission will have to make some potential decisions regarding phasing or whatever that might be, depending on the budget dollars that we have available to build it. So if there isn't anything further, I appreciate all the time and the comments, and I think at the end of the day we've got a pretty good layout. I think everybody is in agreement that it does seem to work. You know, there might be some adjustments that we could potentially make to try to get everyone's concerns and make everyone happy, if you would. So I thank you kindly for your time and being here tonight. Sound good?
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for those online as well.